So Chase, I really want to know, can we actually brainwash ourselves to be healthy?
Absolutely. And I can give you the answers on exactly how to do that in 4 steps.
This is Chase Hughes, the #1 human behavior expert in the world. He spent 20 years in the military training the CIA and government agencies on influence, persuasion, and brainwashing. So I got the chance to sit down with him and extract how we can use these very same principles to brainwash ourselves to achieve any health goal that we want and radically shift our identity to become the person that already has the result that we're after.
If you want to learn brainwashing, the best place to do that is to start with the fear model. It's FEAR. F is focus. And what we're really trying to do is not thinking of how a human being starts focusing. We're really thinking at a mammalian level. In any mammal that you can think of, the moment that something unexpected or different is introduced, there's a tremendous amount of increase in focus in that animal. So always think of it in terms of there's a human side of this and there's an animal side of this. And if I don't get the animal side right, the human side is going to try to logic its way out of problems and it's not going to work. And this is what makes all of our body work. It's why we don't have to remember to breathe. It's why you can't hold your breath until you die. It's because this animal brain is below the human part of our brain is running the show completely. So introducing new parts of my life that no matter what, when I wake up in the morning, I walk down to make coffee, there are things that are different that tell my brain this is not like it was before. Something has changed. If you think about when we capture a detainee overseas in intelligence work or we capture like an enemy combatant, the first thing we do is cut their hair and put them in overalls that are way too big for them. It's a very distinct and solid disruption of what they can predict and what they're used to. Everything is shifted on its head. So that is the first element of brainwashing, is that extreme level of novelty which manufactures focus.
So let's shift to the next one, which is emotion.
So this is, I need some kind of emotional stimulus that's repetitive. I don't mean like you're watching a rom-com or some sad movie to like manufacture emotions. What I mean is you are doing things to build an emotional connection to what is going on. And this happens through negative emotion and positive emotion. On the negative side of emotion, you have something that I like to call self-deprivation. It's just depriving yourself of things. You're kind of treating yourself like a detainee in one of these operations, except you're doing it for good. So cold showers in the morning. I'm setting my alarm clock 30 minutes earlier throughout the day. I'm exercising when I don't want to. I usually do sugar in my coffee. I'm taking that sugar out. And what this is secretly doing on the emotional side, the mammalian part of our brain, it says this person is providing and developing proof and facts that are proving that discipline is starting to occur. And the animal part of your brain is learning that you are in charge now. And the second part is there's an emotional aspect to discipline that most people lack, in that we're not forward thinking. The way that I define discipline is your ability to prioritize the needs of your future self ahead of your own. And the reason that most people have discipline problems is that they don't have a mental relationship with me out in the future. Like it's 11 p.m., I've stayed up too late, maybe I got drunk or something, I came home and I'm just gorging on cheesecake like I'm a madman. That is because I've lost a connection with future me. So the way to do that is I need a visual reminder and I need to develop a visual relationship with a future version of me. You download that app that's called Facetune or Face App. It's an app that makes you look like 85, 90 years old. And you just take a selfie and you make yourself look old as hell and you put that everywhere. Put it on your fridge, put it on your bathroom mirror, just put it in your awareness, because this is what's actually called the reticular formation in your brain. And what we're doing is just repeated exposure leads to future desire and future focus. I'm teaching my brain that I am becoming familiar with all of those things that I'm routinely exposing to my brain. And this is where we get into agitation and the repetition part of that fear model.
Okay, so what's the next step then?
Repetition. So this would be to take all of those steps and continue to repeat that process.
So the fear model is what we can use to brainwash ourselves. But then there's another framework that he shared with me that is all about taking control of the mammalian part of our brain, which is the thing that's really driving the show. And that's the fate model.
It's, can I establish the focus of the animal, the authority, tribe, and emotion? So that spells out fate. I'm going to establish some kind of focus, and we really hammered on that. Next is authority. Who is allowed to give me good and bad feelings? That's essentially what an authority is. Am I receiving a good or bad feeling from from this, which should be the people that absolutely care about you, the people that are close to your life. Authority is like kind of an open door. I have one channel that has 1 million. I've got another YouTube channel that's got 500,000 on it. If I go in there and I allow those positive comments to make me feel great, it's the same exact door that's open for all the negative comments. Like if you wouldn't invite someone into your house, why would you invite them into your head? And then it's tribe. This is who am I surrounding myself with 24 hours a day? Who am I watching on social media? Even if it's 45 seconds, that's part of my tribe. So whoever we see and we spend a prolonged period of time with, the brain says that is part of a tribe. I need to kind of absorb some of that so I act like people that I hang around with. And then the emotional part. And when it comes to the mammalian brain, when I'm saying emotion, it's also the emotional scripts. So there's things that my brain does to memorize these patterns for driving a car or operating a coffee machine, or everything throughout my life has these little apps that I've gotten developed. So if I use the fate model, I can gain control over an animal.
So with any health transformation, we have who we are and who we're trying to become. And sometimes the reason why we lose progress is because we didn't update how we see ourselves and our identity. So we find ways to sabotage ourselves and regress back to who we were.
There is a problem with most people being comfortable in these environments. And I think initial discomfort is okay. And I think a lot of people quit some of this stuff because of that discomfort. There's a little discomfort with everything. But relaxing into this version of what we're talking about here is I have a worldview that generally just says things are going to be just fine. And if I don't have that worldview, I'm stressed out, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm worried about the outcome. And we get stressed when we depend on a very specific outcome. But if we have a generalized outcome of I'm doing the discipline, I'm doing all the work, I'm prioritizing my future self, and things are going to be just fine. Just having that worldview helps somebody to really relax, whether they have social anxiety or anything like that. That one thing is the fastest way to get to relaxation. And we call this calm enjoyment. If I can't be in calm enjoyment when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm folding laundry, when I'm doing these tasks that I would rather not do, when I'm mowing the yard or whatever it is, if I can't do it there, and then I expect myself to be able to do it in another environment that's a little bit more stressful or more public, I'm not going to be successful. If I can be in calm enjoyment, then it's going to start leaking as a byproduct into other areas of my life of things that I would rather probably not do.
So one of the keys to brainwashing is really understanding the mammalian part of the brain. And one of the most powerful ways we can influence this mammalian part of our brain is through building digital vision boards. Chase explains to take some time to build out these slideshows with hundreds of slides that have imagery that represent the goals that we're trying to create.
What we're really doing is programming our brain for what to seek, what to look for, and what is normal. That's the biggest part of a vision board I don't hear people talk about. I'm normalizing those things.
So buy some digital photo albums, then upload your slideshow, and then play that on repeat 24 hours a day and have multiple photo albums throughout the house. That way the imagery is hitting our mammalian part of our brain over and over and over again. This trains our brain to make what is unfamiliar to us familiar. And then our brain begins to start looking for this in our environment.
One of the things I've done with a couple of clients, and one of them is a congressman, is printing out like 50 or 60 close-up images of a cell and mitochondria and putting it all over everywhere that I can see it. My desktop wallpaper, on my fridge, or on my phone wallpaper, just to get me not just developing a relationship with future self, but we also can't see our cells, and it helps to be able to see them on a regular basis. So there's some kind of animalistic understanding of I need to take care of that little molecule before I take care of everything else.
Chase is a big proponent of hypnosis and uses it as a tool to make big changes in belief systems. But what he suggested to do in tandem might surprise you.
If you just think of like, if I was really, really needing to brainwash some detainee somewhere, what would I involve? We know for a fact, and it's been proven in studies, and they call this interrogative suggestibility, that if a person is just a little bit sleep deprived, it increases the suggestibility of our brain. So if I'm going to see a hypnotist, I'm going to see a coach, I'm like trying to sit in front of my vision board for like an hour and a half. If I'm just a little sleep deprived, it makes my brain more impressionable and more suggestible. And this is critical during those first 72 hours. The second element of this is, and I'm at a glucose deficit. I don't think the studies go into the reasons, but they go in to show that glucose deficiency increases suggestibility. I think that it's just when a person is hungry, they get creative.
I ended up meeting with Chase in person a few days later in Austin. And the more time I spent with with him, the more I realized how powerful these principles really are. In fact, Chase was able to apply these very same principles that you are about to learn to beat a very rare and degenerative brain disease. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. And then he explained how we can map our dopamine and attach that dopamine to the very things that we're trying to create in our life. And that's going to make it really easy to stay motivated and to get reward from the things that are actually serving our future self.
Dopamine is a motivation chemical. It's motivation and muscle movement. So you could draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper here, like that. This is our good dopamine. This is our bad sources of dopamine. So I'm going to write down all the little things in my life where I'm getting dopamine from. The step 2 is with a 100-point scale. You have only 100 points and you have to use all 100. Give a point value. What's the percentage of dopamine throughout your day that comes from that thing? So if I have bad over here, somebody's on porn on a regular basis. I'm like, how much? Like 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day? All right, so let's give that a 35%. Do you want 35% of your dopamine to come from that? No. Where do you want to take these points and give it to it over here? So understanding, like, if I just have a visual representation of where I'm getting my dopamine from, it's the first time I'm really pulling all that stuff out and putting it in the light. So anything that we can expose, we gain control over.
And one of the most powerful ways to do this is to make our future self a source of dopamine.
We overestimate how much discipline it's really going to take to get a habit started. But the moment that we start living in a way that we are a source of dopamine, which most people never get to a point where they're living like that. This is a thing that I do every year. I will go into those coats and I'll put a couple $100 or something in the pocket of the coat that I'm going to be using next winter, and I'll forget about it. I'm going to do things so that I'm getting dopamine from past tense me. The secret is I'm looking forwards with concern. I'm looking backwards in time with gratitude. Fill in the blank. Am I looking backwards with gratitude? And what could I do today to manipulate myself in the future to feeling grateful for me?
The problem with making some of these changes is it can be extremely uncomfortable because it's just not who we are yet. For example, adopting a new diet or going to the gym or building a meditation practice. So I asked him, how can we get around this?
Usually when somebody shifts their identity, they work for years and years and years, and then the bottom starts to shift. But it's so much easier to shift the bottom, what matters the most, and that's our worldview. You hear people working on their identity that says, I'm more confident, I deserve this, or I am enough, and all of these kind of I am statements. Changing how you view the world makes all of that almost a byproduct. Rewiring how I view the world is the gateway to all those changes that most people are trying to make. It comes down to the basic question of, is the world a friendly place or not? That's going to dictate whether or not I trust people, whether or not I'm outgoing, whether or not I'm confident, whether or not I think I'm going to succeed. When you see somebody that's really trying to lose weight, they have an idea about the world that's going to dictate whether or not they're going to lose that weight. So losing weight is hard, losing weight is difficult, losing weight is necessary. There's all kinds of these little worldview statements driving this decision. But at the end of the day, I need to shift that person's worldview to, I am fully in control. That's the number one thing. The fastest way to consolidate this mindset in your head is to make it a big deal and write a letter to your family and say that the reason that I failed you, and we do this with the intelligence guys, maybe the reason I didn't come home is because I catastrophized and I got out of the mindset that things are going to be okay. And it flustered me so much that I didn't succeed. That's why I'm not here with you, and that's why I'm not successful.
By the way, I'm in the early stages of development of a new product that helps you do this very thing of shift your identity into this new version of yourself that already has the health outcome that you're after, utilizing some of these very same methods. So if you want to be part of the early beta testers, I'll put a link down in the description, or you can go to wellnessdaddy.com/waitlist so we can add you to the list and we'll notify you whenever it's ready to be launched. When did you first start noticing that you were having seizures?
Just a couple of years ago, I had a seizure and it was on camera. So it was while I was filming for YouTube. And I didn't really remember the whole thing until my wife showed me a video of it. And I watched myself on the screen. I'm like, I have temporal lobe epilepsy. With this, I was having memory loss. And it got to a point where we have a 13-month month old now. When I was driving my wife into labor and delivery, I didn't know who she was. I knew that she's a family friend. She obviously trusts me, and I trust her. She's smiling and looking at me. I didn't say anything that would give me away for a while. I took selfies with her and had no idea who she was.
So he was diagnosed with this brain disease called temporal lobe epilepsy, where basically he was having seizures almost every day. And right before he has these seizures, he goes into this weird, crazy, eerie sense of deja vu, where he feels like everyone is setting him up. And this is called derealization, where he doesn't know what is real and what's not real.
And at that point, I decided I'm putting a protocol together. And the drugs that a neurologist tried to give me, the number one side effect of those drugs was seizures. So I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm going to go see a different doctor, different neurologist. I went and saw the best in the world in every arena. And I developed this protocol. Within 24 hours, I never had a seizure again.
So these frameworks and ideas sound extremely powerful, but this is all just in theory, right? We're just talking about these things. So I wanted to really understand practically, how has he applied these strategies in his own life?
After that meeting with the doctor, I said, I am in charge of my health, not the doctor. I am going to make this happen. I am 100% in charge of whether or not my brain decays. I had to essentially just shut off my company and risk that I was going to lose all this money. I may have to lose my job. I might do XYZ might happen. That's fine. Things are going to be okay. And I'm willing to undergo this absolute discomfort. I set about putting a discipline system in place every single day that tracked all of this stuff, that I would never fail to take any of these things, because it would mean might fail my family.
I think it's your most recent book or second most recent book with this idea of like, I need to leave my legacy behind so that I can take care of my family. You must have had to be really fighting hard to hold this belief while simultaneously knowing that it could all be over.
Being in the military 20 years, you get used to the it might be over today feeling. I wrote the book so my family could make money if I didn't make it or my brain went bad. But I thought no matter what happens, things are going to be okay because I'm writing the book.
This is where everything really started to fall into place and became very real for me, because as he was telling this story about how his brain is rotting and he's simultaneously putting his life's work into this book so that he can take care of his family, and realizing that he can maintain this worldview that everything's going to be okay during the most stressful period of time in his life, where he had to shut down his company, he's trying to figure out this protocol, and he's trying to take care of his family and get his brain back at the same time. That worldview is what allowed him to maintain composure and execute the plan of, hey, I'm in control, I'm the captain of my ship, and I'm going to figure out a way to get better. Taking full radical responsibility, and then being willing to experience 10 out of 10 discomfort of not knowing what's going to happen with the business, seeking out the best experts in the world, and putting together a pretty radical and against the grain protocol to actually see if this is going to help his brain. And so for you, whatever your situation is, whatever you're going through, if you can maintain this worldview of, I'm in control, everything's going to be okay, and I'll do whatever it takes, 10 out of 10 discomfort, to make sure that I get to the end result, then it is inevitable that you will get the outcome that you're after. That's how you can apply these principles to completely and radically shift your life and your health forever.